Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we're going to talk about A&E WWE Biography on D-Generation X, which was interesting. I liked the second half of the biography a lot better than the first, because the first half had a lot of stuff that we already knew in it. Outside of, Triple H, some of the Triple H stuff, pretty much everything about Shawn Michaels, we already did biographies on Shawn Michaels. There's already been several documentaries that already involve Shawn Michaels. We don't really need more Shawn Michaels, We don't really need Shawn Michaels. As much as I love Shawn Michaels, we don't really need any more. Just being honest. So we're going to focus a lot on Triple H and the New Age Outlaws in this biography. So the general idea when they started is that Raw was getting stale. This would be the early 90s. And they talked a lot about wrestlers having two jobs, the wrestling plumber and the wrestling dentist. And I'm like sitting here like, you're talking about my childhood here. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. T.L. Hopper was stupid. The Repo Man was stupid. Mantar, it was stupid. A lot of it was stupid, but, it wasn't, those ones the guys at the top. Those are guys at the bottom. There's always going to be stupid wrestlers near the bottom of the card. There's always going to be that kind of stuff. But anyway, Paul Levesque was born in New Hampshire. His dad got him into wrestling, and he saw that they were basically real life superheroes. At 14, he started going to the gym. He became a little bit of a bodybuilder. From there, he met Ted Arcidi, who he begged to get him into the business, even though he got rebuffed a couple of times before he got the phone number for Killer Kowalski and ended up going to his gym, his wrestling school, rather. Bruce Pritchard says he saw Terra Rising at the Killer Kowalski's school, but didn't really offer him a job until he was Jean-Paul Levesque in WCW as a member of the Blue Bloods. I think they could have really cut out a lot of the Shawn Michaels stuff and replaced it with more Triple H material, because we really don't get a lot of how Triple H felt in WCW. It's like the McMahons do a really good job of not talking about themselves too much. They could have easily just made the first half of this Triple H, and the second, it could have replaced Shawn Michaels with Sean Waltman. Put a lot more X-Pac in here, which I felt like that's the thing that was missing. There probably should have been more X-Pac. But anyway, Triple H was brought to the WWE under essentially another blue blood gimmick. Pretty much what he was doing in WCW at the time. Again, we're skipping Shawn Michaels because we've already done biographies on Shawn Michaels. But the things kind of business picks up with the Clique. At this point, we're talking about these guys in terms of they are working together and they want to improve the business. Again, the business has gotten stale. They're not quite sure what to do, but something needs to be done. And Shawn Michaels they say he's an asshole, and Triple H is sort of the designated driver. So this is an interesting thing that the Clique were the guys who went to Vince to tell him that his product was behind the times. This is something that David Shoemaker notes. And they're talking a lot about the wrestlers with second jobs thing. And that society is getting a little bit darker and more realistic, more, realism based. And that's kind of what the direction they want to go in when it comes to wrestling. And X-Pac says, I think, something that was very cool. He said that we just wanted to make the business better so that adults wouldn't be ashamed of being a wrestling fan. I was like, wow, that's very important. As important as, the children having a solid product for them to grow up on without too much vulgarity and all that kind of stuff. It is also, something where you don't want adults cringing that you actually watch it. Like, there's always going to be that element. I mean, it just is what it is. Just to the nature of what wrestling is, there's going to be people who are going to cringe at it. But, it's one thing for people to have I can't believe you watched that versus You watch that shit sort of attitude. And X-Pac noted that it wasn't until him, Kevin, and Scott left that Vince started to kind of get the picture that the product needed to change. And he says it never should have really gotten to that point. So the curtain call was a little nod to reality, is what they said. They were breaking the fourth wall a little bit. And Ric Flair, and no doubt, there's probably going to be tons of people, on Jim Cornette and everyone talking about how there was an insult to the business. And basically, you can't punish 3/4 of the bunch because 2 of them are gone. And Shawn's the champion. So we go to the whole Triple H martyrs himself for the click. Now, I never asked the question before. Maybe it's just me being kind of dim-witted. But I never asked the question of where Sean Waltman was during this time. And we got the answer here that he was actually in rehab. He had taken a bunch of muscle relaxers or something. He got busted. And so he wasn't in the curtain call because he had been sent to rehab. And he was told, essentially, if you come in, you're friends with these guys, you're going to kind of be put in a doghouse too. And he was just kind of like, fuck it, let me go. And so Vince cut him, and that's how he ended up in WCW, but that was very short-lived as well. At this point, Triple H thinks that the curtain call is a good thing, that, it got a great reaction, and that, it's something that people have never done before. It's something new. It's something fresh. And again, that's what they're looking for in the business. They're looking for something fresh. They're looking for something new. And now that Scott Hall, Nash, and Sean Waltman are gone, the bond between Triple H and Shawn Michaels is strengthened. And Triple H continues to be the quote-unquote designated driver, a.k.a. the babysitter. So they kind of skipped over the Triple H job years, which wasn't that long. It was probably about a year and a half that he was just losing every single damn match that he was in. I'll never forget that powerbomb he took from Sid. And it's in that Intercontinental Championship tournament. I haven't seen that match since it happened. I swear to God. But when he got powerbombed by Sid and he flipped over on his stomach, that shit was excellent. It was fantastic. Anyway, they talked about before the curtain call that the Clique had gotten together in Indianapolis with Vince to talk about making the product edgier, and Vince didn't really want to do anything with it. So now Shawn and Triple H are getting an opportunity to work together, which is what they wanted to do. And they ended up meeting Joni, who of course is Chyna. And nobody had ever done a female bodyguard before with her size and her look and everything. And Vince obviously didn't like it. They cornered Shane, talked him into it. And then, with Shane McMahon's blessing, they went to Vince again and got Vince to relent on this and to bring Chyna in. And Chyna's mom was in the documentary. I'm glad that Chyna's mom recognized that, they really didn't know each other very well. Because, as she says, the devil snatched her and took her away at 15. Which was, I guess, drugs, alcohol, being rebellious, partying, stuff like that. And that when she left home at 16, she didn't see her for 27 years. So she really couldn't speak too deeply on who Chyna was as a person because she really didn't know her. She knew her as a baby. She knew her as a kid. But you ain't seen somebody in 30 years. You don't really know them, But of course, they did all of the usual stuff for Chyna, how she broke the mold, how she was, set a new feminist standard in WWE, all that kind of good stuff. Now, there was a new twist on the Shawn Michaels losing his smile piece, something that was actually, I had never heard before. And that's that Shawn wanted to leave and join WCW. That's why he, quote unquote, lost his smile. There's been 100 different reasons that I've heard about him losing his smile. A lot of them was he was injured his knee legitimately and wasn't going to be able to perform. Others was that this was a chance for him to get out of the wrestling Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. But now the story is that he wanted to quit because he was unhappy in WWE without his friends, without Shawn, Scott, and Kevin. But Vince wouldn't let him go. Drugs and the pressure of being the champion, and he wasn't really drawing, and he was being blamed for the lack of drawing. And it was a tough time that they were going through. But, Vince pretty much forced Shawn to punch through it. At this point, DX starts to form. Triple H starts to sort of morph out of the Blue Blood character and more into what they would be called the Degenerates. That Bret Hart is the one who named the group inadvertently by calling them Degenerates in a promo. And Vince and Bruce, because they heard it, decided they was going to twist it into Degeneration, and that's what it is. So that was interesting. They talked about the cultural implications of Suck It and how it became mainstream. I thought that was very interesting at the end that X-Pac said that he doesn't want the legacy of DX to just be how many people got put on punishment or suspended or sent to detention for doing Suck It. But, maybe that's just what it is, And I hadn't really thought about it because being a kid at the time, that's just what you did. You just told people to suck it. You just did crotch chops. It was just your thing. And as I sit here, I don't know when we stopped doing crotch chops. Like, I honestly don't remember when I know when it started. We started with DX. I don't know when it ended. Like, that's kind of how fads go. Fads come and go. You're not really sure when they started, and you're not really sure when they ended. So, Shawn talks about Joni being a bodyguard and a babysitter on screen, but having to be essentially a mama off screen, as the boys basically talked to her a lot, and she was there for them and understood them. They skipped over completely the Triple H Chyna relationship and everything that implies. They skipped all the way over that. They leaped all the way over all of that. They didn't touch none of it. None of it got touched. So Triple H talks about them being junkies for the crowd and how the USA Network was unhappy with what they were doing. It was getting a lot of complaints. Vince McMahon was getting a lot of complaints. And he got a letter from USA Network that, what was going on was too raunchy. And Vince takes this to Shawn and Triple H and says, you guys got to stop what you're doing. The network is complaining. So Shawn and Triple H decided to take the letter and say, hey, how about we make a parody? We're going to throw USA Network's complaints back into their face using a parody of Bill Clinton. I did not have sex with that woman. And clearly everybody knew he was lying, which Triple H said, and that was absolutely true. Everybody knew that was a lie. Hell, I was a kid back then. I knew it was a lie. But this was something that turned USA Network around. They liked the parody. They liked that their stuff was being used against them. And they kind of loosened up the reins a little bit. That allowed Vince to give Triple H and Shawn a little bit more room to breathe. And therefore, DX was allowed to do whatever it is they wanted to do, which is nice. I thought it was nice that Mike Tyson was here. Mike Tyson talked about being a pariah after the whole ear-biting thing. And Rosenberg is like, they brought out the 12-year-old kid in Mike Tyson. Which, when you think about it, that is true. Seeing Mike Tyson, laughing and playing around, that was new. I had never seen that side of Mike Tyson before. The only thing I ever seen Mike Tyson do at this point in my life, when I was 14 or whatever, I seen Mike Tyson beat the shit out of grown men, bite a grown man, just say off the wall stuff. And I had seen him play with some pigeons on a roof. That was it. And him, with the pigeons on the roof was probably the closest thing to a happy Mike Tyson I had seen until I started seeing Mike Tyson hang out with DX. Then it seemed like he was having fun. That felt like Mike Tyson was having fun. So Shawn, of course, got the back injury at the Royal Rumble rather, and ends up dragging his feet to WrestleMania where he puts over Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Triple H is talking about, now this is where I think the story gets really interesting, because Triple H is talking about the pressure that's on him because they don't know what they want to do with D-Generation X now that Shawn is gone. There's a lot of pressure on him to knock this out of the park, to really make this feel special, to be able to fill those shoes. He's got to do it. And the first thing he does is he gets X-Pac. Now, X-Pac, of course, had gotten fired from WCW. I don't even remember what he did. I think he got into a Ric Flair a lot, but he wasn't there very long. And he said that it was pitched to him as him and Triple H were going to be like the co-leaders of DX. Clearly it didn't work out that way. But X-Pac, to me, was an important piece of DX. I really liked X-Pac and DX. The New Age Outlaws were joining up the same night. And I love the New Age Outlaws. And I love that they basically turned this part for maybe 30 minutes into a New Age Outlaws piece. We got the background of both Billy and Road Dogg. Not a lot. It was a truncated version of their history with Brian James saying he was the son of Bullet Bob Armstrong. He went to the military for 6 years, Desert Storm, a Marine. He had no interest in wrestling at first, but wrestling came a calling. And of course, they talked about the real Double J. They didn't go into any detail that he was basically going to be the singing cowboy. As terrible as that was. They didn't go into any real detail about it, but that was his initial character. Well, his initial character was the roadie. The character after that was the singing cowboy, but they didn't really recognize the roadie. So Billy Gunn, of course, wasn't a wrestling fan. He was into rodeo. He was into horses and everything. He grew up in Florida. And he got a rodeo scholarship to go to college. And he ran into Ron and Don Harris, or what some people call the Nazi twins. He ran into them in the gym. And because he was big and buff and everything, they told him about wrestling. This, of course, led him to go for a tryout to the WWE. And Vince liked what he saw and put him in the Smoking Guns. And I think that the Smoking Guns definitely should have got more respect than they did. Shoemaker kind of downplayed it. Like, oh, they were a very important part of a very thin tag team roster. It was like, man, the Smoking Guns ruled. The Smoking Guns were fun. I like the Smoking Guns. I might be the only one. They were kind of goofy with the cap guns and everything. It was kind of goofy, but I like the Smoking Guns. I like the Sidewinder. I think it's a fucking phenomenal finish. How many people I don't even see anybody use that move anymore. I love the Sidewinder. It's a great finish. Anyway, after the Smoking Guns, the breakup of the Smoking Guns was actually a very fun thing that they didn't go into, where you had Billy and Bart. And I think it was a storyline when Bart was injured and Billy was blamed for it. And I forget, there was a woman involved. I'm not sure if it was Sunny or another woman. I think it was supposed to have been Bart's wife or something that was, blaming Billy for everything that has gone wrong. So it was very interesting. I really wish I could, remember more thoroughly the complete breakup of the Smoking Guns. But I remember having fun with it. But there was no second act to it. It was just Billy and Bart are going to separate. And Bart's going to continue being the Smoking Guns because he's still wearing the blue jeans and everything. And Bart's going to continue doing the blue jeans and all that kind of stuff. While Billy is going to be repackaged. Now, they didn't mention that Rockabilly was during the WWE's, during their time where they were taking people from the past, pairing them up with younger stars and trying to basically have them sort of, inherit the gimmick. So they did this a couple of times. They did it with, Steve Austin, who was paired up with Ted DiBiase. He was going to inherit the $1 Million Championship. So now you got Rockabilly. You got Billy Gunn being partnered up with the Honky Tonk Man. And the Honky Tonk Man is going to take Rockabilly to the next level. And it ended up being the single silliest fucking gimmick. It's not the worst gimmick of all time, but it's not good. It's easily one of the top 25 worst gimmicks, especially of that era. If it wasn't for Mantar and Bastion Booger and whatever that gimmick was, what was it, Friar Tuck or something like that Bastion Booger was before he was Bastion Booger. If it wasn't for shit that was that fucking bad, Rockabilly would be somewhere near the top. But that tells you how terrible the WWF's characters were in the 90s. That Rockabilly, as shitty as that was not a top 10 or 15 terrible gimmick. It was awful. Anyway, I really love that they put over the New Age Outlaws. That, you know, the New Age Outlaws was the Shawn Michaels idea. That, you know, Billy Gunn was big and athletic. He was the worker of the group, and Road Dogg was the personality. He was the voice. He was the face. You know, he created the catchphrases. He did everything, and I love how they talked about. Road Dogg didn't prepare a lot of his stuff. That he would, you know, obviously freak out before going out there because he didn't know what he was going to say. And then he would go out there and talk and really just kind of get over. And I love that. That was nice. So Triple H tells the story that it was always the plan to bring the New Age Outlaws into DX. But of course it had to be rushed due to Shawn being injured and with his back injury. So that's why, you know, it kind of makes sense that it was a Shawn Michaels idea, because they were going to bring those guys in. So David Shoemaker then says something I think is very interesting, where he says that the quintessential version of DX is actually the second incarnation. The incarnation of which features the X-Pac, the New Age Outlaws, China, and Triple H. Now, they didn't mention Rick Rude at all. Interesting. And it took me 20 minutes to mention Rick Rude. So, you know, it's like people forgot he was there. But he was there. I don't disagree with David Shoemaker at all. You know, I don't disagree that the second incarnation of DX is the most mainstream, because it's probably the one more people recognize. You know, more people recognize that, oh, you didn't know? And all of that kind of stuff. All the trappings of the New Age Outlaws. Because it went on a shade longer and it would happen in front of a larger audience. The Shawn Michaels version of DX, to me, is my favorite, obviously, because I think Shawn Michaels is the GOAT. But it lasted a shorter amount of time, and it was in front of less people. And it's just, be honest, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and all those guys was on top of the world when the New Age Outlaws was there, you know, doing their thing. And so I don't completely disagree. Now, they talked about the invasion of WCW, and they talked about how this was born out of WCW's tactics. So it was almost like they used WCW's tactics against them once again. That WCW was going to towns before they went. They would go or put their tickets on sale right before WWE would go into town to try to siphon off business from them. And so Triple H, of course, who is in the dabbling in the creative ends, somehow Triple H is in creative meetings in 1995. And here it is now, 1998, 1999, and Triple H is still hanging out in creative, and now it's 2022, and he runs creative. But at this point, he hears that WCW is going to be in the same city, in a different building, and then they get the idea to go to the building of WCW, and they keep saying that you guys are going to ride around in a tank. It's like, it's not a tank, it's a Jeep. You can't hang, like, it's a Jeep. It had like a missile launcher on it, but it's a Jeep. Okay, it's a Jeep. That's so triggering to me. And everybody was down for it. And X-Pac talked about how this is kind of burning bridges. Like, you know, who's going to take you after you do this? And I was like, why do you even care? At this point, I don't think Bischoff would have given a shit. I don't think he would have taken it personally at all. And Bischoff only appears in this episode one time, and that is to express his deep regret that he was too busy doing other things rather than opening the door for DX when they were outside interviewing his fans and banging on doors. And you know what? They probably would have got sued if they did let him on TV, if we're being honest. They probably would have sued. WWE probably would have sued him. There's just so many lawsuits between these organizations. In any event, Bruce Pritchard added a little bit more mythology to this by saying the moment they did the invasion, WWF's ratings skyrocketed past WCW's ratings. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't, like, somebody who probably has deeper understanding into the TV ratings will probably say, there's some truth to it. Some people may say, oh, there's no truth at all to it. I'm not sure. I'm not a ratings guy, but it doesn't feel right to me. It just doesn't feel like it was the truth. I've never heard that before. And I know what WWE is leaving out of these documentaries, and it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. They talked a lot about China being the glue of the team, being the one that kind of held everything together and was taking care of the boys and all that kind of stuff. Then they started getting to the dark part, the sacrifice of being so popular, of the drinking, the partying, and everybody except Triple H has a drug problem. So Triple H is the only one that that has that doesn't have a drug problem. Instead, Triple H is scheming. And they showed some footage of Triple H talking about, nobody wants to see me fight for the belt. I'm a good guy. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a good guy. The company isn't going to push me versus Stone Cold Steve Austin because you're not going to push two good guys against each other. And he's talking about how, DX and the Nation were feuding over the Intercontinental Championship, and they were in a constant conflict. And then suddenly The Rock was in the main event. And so, because The Rock was the heel. And he says, his words were, I looked at the environment and said, we need a Darth Vader here. Which is the same line he used in the Rivals episode. That shows you how, WWE is just basically recycling a lot of this stuff. Everybody else wanted to maintain DX as it was. X-Pac is talking about how they're getting 6-figure royalty checks. You turn heel, do whatever you want to do, but don't screw up our money. Which I don't blame him for saying. I don't blame him at all. Because the money didn't come back. It didn't come back. I'm pretty sure they still get, pretty hefty royalty checks on shirts that are sold. And, I think they're still in video games. Is Xbox still in the video game? I don't know. I'm pretty sure Billy Gunn isn't because he works in AEW. But all that kind of stuff, man, it didn't exactly end like overnight. But David Shoemaker, it was actually Peter Rosenberg, actually gave us quite a bit of perspective that the entire run of DX, the second iteration, was only like 2 years. Like all the memories that you have of DX is between 98 and 2000. That's it. That just goes about the nature of how fast things moved in the Attitude Era. That you had something as iconic as Degeneration X. And it was about 3 years total. The Shawn years were like a year and some change, if that. And the DX, New Age Outlaws years, Sean Waltman years, were about 2 flat before Triple H broke up the group. So that's crazy because the Attitude Era in and of itself wasn't that long. It began in 96. It was pretty much over by 2002. So, before it really got legs underneath it, it was 1998. So maybe 3 or 4 years. I guess that's the kind of perspective that people need sometimes. Because they get this idea that the Attitude Era was like 10 years. It was like 3. It was like 4, And the legacy of it looms so large, but it wasn't that long at all, which is, says a lot about the nature of the product at the time and also about the impact. So they talked a lot about China and China's leaving, and it was odd. They talked about the impact she had as a female wrestler. Of course, Beth Phoenix says that she was watching China win the Intercontinental Championship with her mom and grandma. Then they talked about the financial dispute. JR said China was making over $1 million a year, but wanted to get paid as much as Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that he could not meet her contractual demands. And Triple H's words were, she thought she didn't need this place anymore. This is where, skipping over the whole Triple H China, Hunter, love triangle, everything makes this entire documentary kind of soft. You know, it makes it soft. I'm not saying it was bad. It was good, especially the stuff about the New Age Outlaws. But this was soft as shit. All right. Now, China did have, financial disputes with the WWE. Felt like she should have been making more money. Absolutely. That happened. Now, some people will argue, China fans especially, that the reason why China started asking for more money is because she knew that she wasn't going to get it. And it was basically her way of quitting because she was so upset about the Triple H Stephanie thing. Other people said that China didn't want more money and that she was basically just being a headache about the Stephanie Triple H thing. And they sought to get rid of her to keep down confusion, keep down the chaos. Because China at this point is also on drugs and she's doing other kinds of stuff too. And there's probably some truth to all of that. It's hard to tell what exactly is true and what exactly isn't true. It depends on how you choose to view things. Some people choose to view things as with, the victim narrative of China, that she was being screwed over by who she believes was her fiance and the boss's daughter in an ugly situation, and she was kind of forced out after that, at that point, which is entirely possible and entirely plausible. Hell, if my daughter had done something like that, I probably would get rid of her rival too. That's just me personally. I mean, why have that going on in your locker room? Just really no reason for it, So that's entirely all very possible. So, the the structure of the China portions, some of them were tasteful because they didn't go into, degenerating China too much, but they mentioned some of the stuff that she had going on. So David Shoemaker also added, he adds a little to these things sometimes. And I feel like he added a little bit more to this one. He kind of broke it down. Like after Triple H decided to go and chase the title, which pretty much everybody kind of says, I agree. I understand it. This is a business for people who want to be the top guy. If you have no ambition, what are you doing here? And he kind of broke it down. Like after DX, Billy Gunn was fired. He got the initial push, won the King of the Ring and everything. Once they found out that it wasn't really going to work, he ended up fired. BG or Brian James, he ended up getting fired. China ended up leaving. X-Pac, ended up quitting because he got busted on drugs again. He was basically told to go to rehab and, he pulled a Jeff Hardy and said, I would rather leave. And so he left. Now, my favorite part of this documentary was that they actually did show footage of the Voodoo Kin Mafia from TNA, and Billy and Road Dogg had to explain themselves. And of course, it was just, it was drugs, man. It was drugs. It was bitterness. It was everything. Road Dogg told this story about, he had already been fired from WWF. And he was going to see some friends, quote unquote, in WCW to try to get a job, only to find out that WWF had already bought WCW. Like, what a stroke of terrible luck. So these guys are bombed out and depleted. They're in TNA, just looking bad. They should have showed clips of some of them shoot interviews that they did too, where they was dissing Triple H and talking about how he was holding down Randy Orton and everything. That stuff was pure gold. Pure gold. And Triple H, to his credit, says like, hey, people was coming up to him all the time saying, hey, did you see this Voodoo Kin Mafia stuff? Did you hear what these guys are saying about you? What do you think about this? And he would just say, man, they're on drugs. And it's like, that's incredible perspective. And it also says a lot that Triple H is sort of the guy that they always take out their heat on. Like when Shawn, got pissy the night that WCW was bought, and he went off on Triple H. So it's like Triple H kept being the punching bag for these fucking guys who insisted on ruining their own lives and careers, and, you know, basically blaming him for everything that went wrong. So that's a lot, considering that continues to today. X-Pac tells the story of going down to Mexico and hanging himself, which is frightening. I didn't even know about that either. I probably should need to listen to his podcast a little bit more. Maybe listen to a couple of more clips. Like, that's frightening stuff. And basically he ended up in a coma, and Kevin Nash took him to his third and final rehab. This feels like a lot more recent than what we're talking about, though. I'm pretty sure he didn't go to rehab in, you know, around this time. You know, I don't know how long he's been clean either, so maybe I ought to learn a little bit more. Anyway, Billy got clean in about 2011, 2012. He went to rehab. Then Brian also went to rehab, got cleaned up, tried to go back to work at WWE. Triple H had forgiven him. But Vince was kind of skittish about it. And basically on Triple H's sort of word, and because Triple H sort of believed in him, he was able to get a job as a writer on the writing staff. And they told the story of Shawn wanting to have one more match, and basically Shawn, you know, coming back like he never left, you know, and that was all perfectly fine. They talked about the Homecoming 2012, the big DX return, the first time both iterations of DX were together in the ring at the same time. So Shawn is in the ring with the New Age Outlaws, something that's never actually happened before. And Chyna wasn't there. Chyna was living in Japan at the time. And she said she talked to her mom. This is the only thing her mom had to add after we learned about Chyna's childhood, is that they talked on the phone, and that she was apologizing for the drugs and the porn and all that kind of stuff. Now, they also skipped over the X-Pac Chyna relationship. They didn't talk about that either, which is probably for the best, because that ended up with Chyna getting, I think she got a domestic abuse charge or something like that from that whole situation. And there was a lot of bad stuff that came out of that. So they definitely could have went darker with this episode if they wanted to, especially with so many people being drug addicts. They definitely could have went darker. You know, I think Road Dogg said he was suicidal too in this episode. I don't think he had a plan to commit suicide as much as he was just suicidal as well. So anyway, Chyna passed away, and it was very sad. They didn't go into any real detail about it, but Triple H says that Chyna's legacy is beyond wrestling, and that she showed that women can have power beyond their sexuality, and that she was a superhero. He spoke very glowingly about Chyna, which is all very nice. But, you know, again, we skipped over a lot of important things in this whole situation. Especially, now, I'm glad they skipped over the whole stuff with, you know, Chyna's coming back to the United States and trying to get into the Hall of Fame and trying to sue WWE for royalties and all this kind of stuff. Even though she didn't really have to sue them. They were looking for her. They couldn't find her. And they would have paid her royalties, which I forget, I think it was like $400,000 or something like that. It was a substantial amount of money that she was owed that they hadn't given to her. But I think we've seen the Chyna documentary where they talked about that kind of stuff, and that shit was awful. It was awful. Like, I'm kind of glad they skipped over some of this shit, because the Chyna episode is so dark. Like, especially the stuff from Vice, the Vice documentary they did on Chyna. Jesus H, it was so dark. It was so ugly. I hated everybody involved. The director, the guy who wrote it, the cameraman, everybody that was in the episode. I hated everybody coming out of that thing. So I can understand why they would, you know, try to just be all positive about Chyna. And that's really what they did here. Everything about Chyna was how she was the glue. You know, she was the mama bear for the team, and everything was great. The only negatives they said is, oh, well, she wanted too much money. And she thought she should have made more money as much as Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was like the only negative thing. And JR telling her like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. But, that happens literally all the time. Like, every time WWE really gets a top level female wrestler, she immediately starts saying that she wants as much money as whatever top male wrestler is. Wendy Richter went through the same thing, and Vince fucked her over. That was the very first screw job when Wendy Richter decided she deserved the same amount of money as not Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Hulk Hogan. It was ridiculous. I don't know why she would think that. Then Chyna, I should make as much money as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Absolutely ridiculous. Then, of course, you have Sasha Banks. I want as much TV time and I should make as much money as Ronda Rousey. It's ridiculous. But it's nonsense. And it's hard to tell people that they're not worth it. It's hard to tell people, what their worth is, or that they're asking for too much. It's hard to do that, especially when the person is popular. Like, all three of the women I just mentioned are very, very popular and were. Wendy Richter was very popular in the 80s. They did the whole angle with her and Cyndi Lauper. And along with, the Hulk Hogan Mr. T angle, that was one of the driving forces behind something like WrestleMania 1, Saturday Night's Main Event, the War to Settle the Score, all the stuff that made WWF a household name. Wendy Richter was right in the mix. So she kind of figured, hey, I should be figured into the same amount. And they were like, no. And whatever. But, I get it. But they were just trying to be very, very positive about Chyna. They didn't want to be negative at all. They didn't want to kick any dirt on her. Because I know the last time Triple H did something in public that involved Chyna, and he mentioned the whole, what happens if a kid Googles Chyna? So, they've tried to rehabilitate the Chyna relationship, but it's impossible to do because it is so ingrained in the Triple H Stephanie story. And now that they're the ones in charge, they're really going to try to cover that thing up. They're really going to try to smooth that over. There is absolutely going to be no reason for them to go through that again. So the Hall of Fame induction, when they put DX into the Hall of Fame, this was very cool. X-Pac, being X-Pac, says that he always knew he was going to go into the Hall of Fame, but figured it would be posthumous for him. I was like, God damn, man. God damn, brother. You thought you was going to be dead. Like, that's not good. But it all ends on a positive note. Everybody is doing well. Everybody except Chyna, who is dead, unfortunately. And so it was all in all a fair to good biography. Of course, there's so much stuff missing, but you're trying to do a biography on a group, which, maybe you shouldn't have done a group. Maybe they should have just done the New Age Outlaws and then did, their individual life stories for the first 30 minutes. And then that would have been an hour on Billy, an hour on Road Dogg, and then another half hour on their time in TNA. And then the final half hour on their Hall of Fame induction, getting clean, everything. I would have preferred a New Age Outlaws or even an X-Pac biography to this. Infinitely more interesting than what we got, because I know that there are things in here that are missing, stories that are missing. So it is what it is, but it was okay. It was good. I guess it was good, but it's not on the level of Kurt Angle or Lex Luger or some of those other ones. Those ones were top tier. This one is not top tier. It's like mid tier, upper mid tier. Okay. But let me know what you guys thought. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.